Hey, good people. It's Josh here with a quick couple things. First, a heads up and a content warning. This episode, we are discussing the movie It Ends With Us that was adapted from the book by the same title by Colleen Hoover. The book and the movie deals with heavy subject matter of domestic violence and abuse, so our conversation does as well. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there is help and resources. KnowMore.org has a lot of information and hotlines that are available for those in need. Second thing, we experienced some technical difficulties about 15 minutes into the episode. Eric and Kelly's Wi-Fi explodes once again, but we come right back into it. So thank you for bearing with us. And now onto the episode. Welcome to the Sweet and Condensed Podcast, a podcast by people who love movies, people, and the magic that lives where they meet.
Oh no, you're recording. Wait, I have a question. Are you going to do like the screen pop thing?
What screen pop thing? What are you talking about?
Like when it's only one person is talking, it's only on them?
Yeah, do you not like that or do you want to?
No, I love it. Because then I can sneak bites.
Oh my gosh, sneak bites. I'm going to make sure.
You're going to hear it all. I'm just kidding. I'll put this far.
I'm going to make sure that we get some of you eating front and center. Eric?
No, you can't. I'm going off camera. I just don't want everyone to see me.
Earlier that like when Kelly dozed off in the last episode, she didn't.
Don't say that.
You fell asleep.
No,
Sarah, she literally just got so bored.
Listen,
Drew, Josh, and I yapping that we looked at her on camera. We're like, ooh, we gotta wrap this up.
Wait, that is incredible. That is the best feedback I have ever heard of giving. Be like, y'all are so boring. I'm asleep.
Take a nap.
She's in the other room just crashed.
It's not true. It's literally just a lie. Listen, they were talking about Ryan Gosling movies that I've never even heard of in my life. And they were like really in depth talking about it. And I was like, I have nothing to give to this conversation.
They pan the camera up so we can see the TV in the background. Because Sarah, we could see her watching something. Pan it up so Sarah can see. Just pan it, just real quick. It was on.
It was the whole time.
No, it was not.
And something was playing.
No, it wasn't. Sarah, don't believe
Amazing.
them.
Honestly, Kelly, I kind of want to believe them because I love it. I love it. I'm obsessed with that.
Can you imagine? You just cut to me and I'm just straight up asleep on the couch.
Yes, that I can't imagine that because I can totally see how it happened.
No, oh my gosh. I mean,
you heard me right, Eric.
Stuff.
The slander.
That's unfortunate.
The producers have been begging. They're like, we need to get Sarah on the podcast. Let's get her on the podcast. And now this is what we get?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. What do you expect?
Obviously. I'm like, I'm consistent, if nothing else. So I'm consistently late. I'm consistently bad at scheduling things. I'm consistently mean. Like,
hey, you keep us on our toes.
Yeah, I come in every once in a while and just be like, surprise, I'm still here. Everyone forgot.
If you hadn't have procrastinated the scheduling, I wouldn't be here. It took me that long to read the book. I watched it last night.
Oh my gosh,
literally finished the book last night.
This makes me feel I was just trying to be inclusive. That's what I was doing by forgetting to schedule the first one. I said, Eric's got to be there. He needs a little longer. Let's just
I'm going to take that heat off him.
And speaking of the movie and the book, why don't we jump into this?
Yes. Wow,
all
Josh,
right.
this might be the first time you have ever kept us on track. I'm just noting this down.
I was going to say, whoa.
Person right here.
You know, I'm not known for brevity and I'm not known for staying on track. Tangents, I think.
I'm really proud of you, actually. Okay, go ahead. I won't keep derailing us.
Wait, I have one thing before.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Before you start, I think we should all text Drew and like boo him for not being a part of this because he could have added to the chaos.
Oh, 100%. I don't know.
Can you imagine the five of us on a podcast? Because
it would be crazy.
There would be so much going on.
I think there's a slight delay too sometimes where it adds more to this chaos. And so I think 5 people would just be tragically chaotic in a great way though.
Josh, 10th time's the charm. Kick us off.
Time for what?
Trying to start.
Kick us off.
Trying to start. Yeah. Welcome to the Medium Project.
Hosted by bibliocynophiles, discussing adaptations of various mediums for the screen.
Join us as we give our thoughts on the hits and misses when it comes to casting, set design, and overall the looks of the worlds that have been adapted.
We'll have these conversations with a medium amount of research and a large amount of passion. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts.
What's up, everybody? We are back on the pod. We have, for not the first time, but the first time on Sweet and Condensed since the rebrand, the one and only Sarah Warland. Why don't you say hi to the people?
Woohoo! Hello, people.
Sarah Warland and I spent a couple years of our lives trying to do a podcast called The Medium Project, which is out on podcasts and streaming platforms, but we have merged and we're doing what we call a Medium Project episode right now. But we are now bringing into the chaos of what is the Medium Project and the world of adaptations. Kelly and Eric, why don't you say hi to the people?
Hey.
Hello.
Very enthusiastic.
So demure, Kelly.
Very cutesy. Oh my gosh, Sarah, you speak my language.
I still have yet to know what that word means.
Nobody knows what it means.
Nobody knows, but it's provocative. Gets the people going. Okay, so first off, though, why don't we launch into this? How did we end up here today? Because we're talking about It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, a book that was adapted to the screen. But how did this happen? And I have to point to Kelly, because I believe it all started with Kelly. Kelly, what do you have to say?
Kelly bullying that's how it's really started. And it just kind of trickled down to everybody. It didn't, it almost got to Drew, but it didn't. But it started as so we were going to Colorado and I was like, I don't even know how the running thing came up. I'm not sure how. I don't know if you invited us on a run. And I was like, absolutely not. But I was like, okay, what if I like pitch something really outrageous? Then they're not going to do it. And then I don't have to run, but I don't want to be like the only person that's like, no, I don't want to run. Like people do that for like fun. Like that's like if my life is in danger or like, so I was like, I'm going to just pitch an idea. So I texted Josh and Eric and I was like, okay, totally. Yeah, I'll go on a run if you guys read It Ends With Us and we can do a podcast about it. And Eric was like, oh, absolutely. I will do it immediately. It's so easy. And Josh was like, oh, okay. Then he sent me like a picture of the It Ends With Us book in his hand. And I was like, oh, there he's going to do it. I think he's actually going to do it because Brenna, I guess, had the book. And so Josh started reading it and actually finished it. You finished it in like what, 2 days?
It was like 2 days, heads up, because Kelly was like, this is impossible. Here's 48 hours. He's in the middle of like probably finals. Let me just go ahead and throw this out as an option. And so
fever read.
She had such little faith. She didn't take running shoes on the trip.
She ran in her high top Vans. Just kidding. I have no idea. I forgot.
I don't even remember what I ran in, but he did it. He completed it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was actually worked out because we got to talk about it on the little run because we stayed together and watched the fit people run in front of us.
Yep, 100%.
Because we were nowhere near their level. It's so funny because Eric was like, I'm going to run with you and Josh. Like, I'm going to run with you guys. And then 2 minutes in, he just like sprints forward into like a mile ahead of us. And I was like, oh. It was a rough run, but it was fun. We got to talk about
it's not my tempo. Yeah, you did it too. You ended up running like 3 miles.
Yeah, that was the
It's in platform Adidas.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Platform Adidas.
They were platform. But then Eric just didn't do it. He like read 2 pages and then he just waited. And then Josh was like, we should make this with Sarah. And I was like, oh my gosh, do you think that she would read it? And he was like, yeah, I do. And then he asked you and I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to read it too. And mind you, I hadn't read this book. Like, I read it for the first time like 4 years ago. So I didn't remember anything. Eric was reading me some stuff from it. And I was like, oh my gosh, having people read. I was a little nervous about that, but it was a good time. It was and it got us all here. So Eric finished it last night. He had like 8 years to do it, and he finally did it.
Congratulations, Eric. That's job well done. If anything,
At the buzzer,
committed to the bit, dedicated to the podcast. We respect that. We respect that. The hustle. The producers are proud. Sarah, were you familiar with this book prior to any of this?
Yeah. So I've read another Colleen Hoover before this book. I read her book Verity. So weird, so
Oh,
creepy. Um,
terrifying.
but I read it in like 6 hours because I couldn't stop reading it. And I literally just like laid on the floor of my parents' house over Christmas one year. And there's like not enough room on all the couches now that all my family is there. And so I was just like, it's chill. I'll lay on the ground. And I read this book in 6 hours. And I was like, that was crazy. But I also was like, I didn't love it, but I just like read it really fast. So I hadn't read any other Colleen Hoover until this opportunity was offered to me. Thank you, Kelly. And of course, I'd seen all of the stuff for the movie coming out, everything about like Blake Lively. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But I hadn't read anything by it. I knew it was out. I see it all the time on shelves. And so this was a great opportunity to actually get back into Colleen Hoover after my 6-hour fever read of Verity. And I did the same thing with this book. I was over at the Scrimshaws' house one evening and Brenna let me borrow It Ends With Us. So that book has gotten a lot of good use out of it. And I was like, okay, I'll like try and read this in like the next month. I proceeded to furiously text Josh and Brenna for like 5 hours straight as I read this book. Again, I finished it. I got it on a Friday night. I was done with it by like Sunday at 2 p.m. So I don't know what it is about these books, but there's something like you can only furiously read them extremely fast, except for apparently Eric, which I'm really sorry, Eric. That's not a diss, but like you got it done. But yours wasn't a fever read. It was more of a like lingering cold read. So
Verity
That's
is
kind of
amazing.
embarrassing for me, to be honest. Now I'm like,
no, it's just like it's
you know what?
not
Maybe I took
embarrassing.
it in a little more. You know,
Yeah,
I soaked it in.
you probably know more details about it, Eric. I only know the like Fast and Furious version where I like skipped over the words. I refused to say the name Ryle in my head. I was like, that's not a name. I refuse to even pronounce this in my brain. So like you probably had a real experience of it, Eric, and mine was more like I'm furious but also can't put it down. Just different, you know?
Yeah, Eric, why don't you walk us through your 7-month walkthrough?
That's
of
a
this
little
book.
dramatic. It was 5. It was 5 months.
It was May
It was like early May.
or April.
It was early. Don't push it.
Late April, early May.
It was last year sometime.
I don't know.
I don't want to pull up receipts.
I think I read one chapter and then just didn't because I knew I was going to run anyways. And I figured Kelly would get bullied into running no matter what happened. And then when the movie was coming out, she's like, babe, read with me. I was like, all right. So I picked it back up and then put it back down again. I'm going to be so real with you guys and to our just thousands of listeners. I'm not a major reader of like certain books. I don't know. It's just like, I'm not a big time reader just in general. Like you guys all love books. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll read it. And then this last week I told Kelly, I really finished it this last week. I read the majority of it in the last 5 days. I got hooked into it. So it was good. But I don't know. What was the last book I read, babe? I don't know. I couldn't
Lord
tell you.
of the Rings.
The Bible. It was the Bible. Legitimately. So this whole concept that you guys have of your podcast is amazing. But I was telling Kelly, aside from Lord of the Rings, I have not read a lot of books that were turned into movies. Like No Country for Old Men, I saw the movie and read it a few years later. But of like, oh, I loved this book and it's finally becoming a movie. That I just hadn't experienced that. So this was a very enraging experience for me to like finish the book and immediately watch the movie. I was super angry. I was super upset. So now I see how you guys are so passionate about it because it matters a lot for certain books. I'm like questioning every decision. We rented it at home. So I paused it every 20 minutes, just pissed off.
It was
no
a
joke.
2-hour movie and it took us 4 hours to watch it because he was pausing and like, wait.
So angry.
They didn't include
I was like,
this.
I literally
And
just
like,
read this.
I know.
So it's like my first real experience, aside from Lord of the Rings when I was a child, to be like so angry at a movie. So anyways, that's my experience with this.
Our 30-minute phone call during the middle of the movie?
Middle of the movie, yep.
Yes, it does.
Which we might get to later why. But.
Oh, 100% we'll be getting to that.
Okay, wait, we have to just note though, Eric is like, yeah, it took me forever to read this until he comes out and says that he actually read it in 5 days. So you also had a to read.
That's so true. Except for the first 2 chapters.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
right.
which, that's tough. You have to have a really special author to hook you in the first 2 chapters.
So true. So true. The first couple chapters of a book are always just like the slowest part of the entire book. It's hard to get into.
100%.
Except for the Bible.
In the beginning.
I'm sorry. In the beginning.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is a good place to start generally. So, yeah, so this book came out in 2016. It was written by Colleen Hoover, and the movie came out in 2024, which I don't know, it feels relatively like that's not a long time. Did they just blow up? Kelly and Eric just died, I think, again.
Oh, they are frozen for sure.
Can you hear me?
This happened last time. They raptured. Like they literally just zoom on out of here. And I think that's what just happened. Alrighty, well, Eric and Kelly have come back from the Hades, from the afterworld, afterlife, wherever y'all went.
Underlife.
Isn't that like a Greek myth? Like Orpheus goes down into Hades and rescues his wife. I think that's a thing. I think that's what just happened.
Adorable.
Cute.
For sure.
That was very kind
Eric
of you,
and
Eric.
Kelly. Cute.
Cutesy.
Cutesy,
On brand.
Demure. Did I do it right?
Yeah, good job,
Did I
Josh.
do it right?
Approval.
I just want to fit in. Alrighty, so this book was written by Colleen Hoover. It came out in 2016, and the movie came out August 9th, 2024, which feels like a short amount of time for an adaptation, which I don't know if I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing. I just find it interesting. But this movie was made by, it was directed by Justin Baldoni, who also plays Ryle, who also his production company bought the rights from Colleen Hoover to make this book years ago. It's written by Christy Hall, and the letterbox description says, "We break the pattern or the pattern breaks us. When a woman's first love suddenly re-enters her life, her relationship with a charming but abusive neurosurgeon is upended, and she realizes she must learn to rely on her own strength to make an impossible choice for her future." Kelly's favorite website, RottenTomatoes.com, says that it's 57% out of with 180 reviews, which is actually currently standing higher than The Joker, and I'm not going to attempt to say the full name because it's a French word, I think. I might get dragged for that because it might not even be French. But Joker 2 is at like 53, which is wild. So it ends with us at 57, but the audience score, the popcorn meter, is 91%. The world loved it. It's starring Blake Lively as Lily Bloom, Justin Baldoni, Jenny Slate, Brandon Sklenar. So sorry, Brandon. Hassan Minaj, Kevin McKidd, Amy Morton, Alex Stater, and Isabella Ferrer. I'm so sorry, people. But if you're listening to this, I apologize. But those are like a few of the names of the people starring. So here we go. We're going to jump into this adaptation, and we're going to run through these through different categories. And Sarah is going to lead us through our first one. Sarah, what do you got for us?
I feel so rusty doing this, but we're going to jump in with the hypes. I really like the rebrand on this, the hypes and gripes, spelled with GRYPE. As it should be.
Consistency's key.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, we're going to start it off with our hypes category. So basically what we mean by this is something in the adaptation or something that happened in the book, something that was adapted into the film that we thought worked particularly well, or something we were really excited to see adapted and thought that it like came out really good. So that's where we're going to kick it off with these hypes. I'd love to hear a couple of hypes from each of you. And then if all of my hypes are not hit on by all of you, then I'm going to toss them into the ring at the end of this category. So, Kelly, how about you kick it off?
How did I have a feeling that I was going to be going first? I like wrote down these and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so confused and they're going to call on me. I feel like a nervous kid.
It's like
in a
school
class.
all
I don't
over
know.
again.
Okay, I also feel I'm like looking through mine. I'm like, ooh, which one do I start with? I should start with something light and fun, and all of mine are super heavy.
Just do it. Just dig in right away.
Okay. Ooh, I know one. One thing that I loved right off the bat was that's like not as deep was the flower shop. It was everything that I pictured in my head, like the colors, the size, the decor, the feel, the moodiness, like it was everything. Like it's like they took it outside of my head and just put it on screen. Did anybody else feel that way?
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was so good. That was like the one thing that I felt was spot on in the whole movie, to be honest.
So what I'm hearing is the gripes category is gonna have a little bit more content.
Okay, no, but I also feel like the types are extremely like heavy. So I don't want to be like, well, in the abuse scene, let's just jump right into it. I'm like, the flower scene. So does anybody else have any that are kind of fun, kind of fresh?
No, you got to go straight to it, straight to the core, cut through to the soul, Kelly.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. All right, let's talk about, because this is one of the things that I felt was done really well. I loved how the abuse scenes were portrayed, because I felt this, and I watched Eric go through it last night, where it was almost filmed as like an accident. And I remember being in the theater and being like pissed, because I was like, that looked like an accident. And in the book, it's very much like not an accident. And I was like, everyone's going to get a interpretation of like what's happening here. It was not an accident, because every single incident made it look like an accident. And I was like, he didn't accidentally hit her because his hand got burnt, and he didn't accidentally push her down the stairs. Like, these were all very intentional, like awful things that were happening to her, but they made it look very like, oops. And I was so mad until they pulled it back at the end, and she's having these flashbacks and these moments where she like was able to take off her rose-colored glasses almost and like see what was actually happening. And I just thought that was so good, in a way that it like, you saw Lily's perspective, and it was almost easier for her to like write it off as an accident, because then she wouldn't have to come to terms with like what actually was happening. So I almost think it was like almost like a trauma response. And it really showed throughout the whole movie how blinding love can actually be. So I loved that. I don't know about you guys. I know some people did not like that, because they felt like it like took away from the seriousness of the scenes. But I thought that it was a good way to show the audience what someone who is getting abused kind of looked like.
Totally.
Yeah.
I just have to say here, Kelly, already you're 2 out of 3 of my things that I had for hype. So I'm
great minds think alike.
I know. I'm in full agreement. Gentlemen, would you like to chime in? Eric or Josh, who wants to kick it off?
I don't want Josh to steal this. Babe, I'm so sorry to follow up with that, because I totally agree with what you said, because reading it so freshly this week, the way it was written,
Yeah.
We'll get into this later, and the gripes and different things. A lot of like the sexual scenes and some of her language that she used felt cringy at times, but the abuse scenes did not in the book. It was written in a way that, like you said, the perspective was, wait, did that actually happen? So the way they displayed that was great. So to go on a lighter note, the onesies, I'm glad they actually wore onesies. We'll get into cast later, but the introduction of some of the oh my gosh, this is not a casting thing. It's just the introduction of Marshall.
Yep.
And like these side characters. Oh, Alyssa, the introduction of Alyssa, not Ryle. Never was a fan of him in the book or the movie, but of Alyssa and Marshall, and even young Lily and young Atlas. The introduction of these different characters on screen, I thought was great. In the same way the book causes you to love them immediately. Well, it's also, what's his name? Hassan Minaj. Like he's a funny guy, and like whether or not you've seen him in other movies, but I like that. I like the way they draw you into the supporting cast right away. Onesies, also the glad they were just actually wearing onesies.
So good. Is that
shift
real?
gears.
Is that real? Like, can you actually get free beer in Boston if you wear a onesie around? Does anyone know?
Fact checked.
Let me see.
What is this? The VP debate?
Yeah.
Hot mics.
You said you weren't going to fact check.
The rules were.
You wouldn't fact check me.
Oh my gosh. No, that's great. I liked that too, Eric. I thought that fashion, I think, is going to come back around in these categories, but like the onesies for sure.
So good.
Those ruled. Wait, are we still fact checking?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I'm waiting for.
I know. I was like, I'm literally pausing.
We're waiting. We need to know.
I cannot move forward.
We need to know.
It does not look like that's the case.
Oh, wow. What lies?
It's called, there's a onesie bar crawl.
Well, let's see. Gemini says, yes, there are bar crawls in Boston where you can get it, but wait, did you get the onesie, the crawlwithus.us? Or
Yeah.
no, crawlwith.us?
It's like a fan ritual according to Boston Magazine. But
Fan Hill
free
Hall for a
beer.
onesie themed bar crawl. Dry January not your thing, then zip up your onesie and make a toast.
I would show you guys what I'm reading, but the potato won't allow it to come through.
There's blinding
So fact
light.
check. Wrong, Ryle.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, that is at least we know now, so that we don't have to
go
walk
to
around
Boston.
Boston in onesies. Cool.
Eric, do you have another one, or am I launching us?
Just the rest of it is gripes, my friend.
Just gripes, straight up gripes. All right. Some of my gripes, I did have the flower shop, by the way. That was one of them. Or for my hypes was a flower shop. I love the vibe of the flower shop. But something I really appreciated was the adaptation of the Ellen journals. Like from the book, I was like, wait, what? Like every other, like there's a lot of chapters of but I was like, how are they going to adapt this? And I did appreciate that it was very subtle. Like I did appreciate that it wasn't as centered as the books were. It makes sense in the book. You're rereading journals. It translates well in the written format. But I was like, wait, how are they going to do this whole I'm writing a letter to Ellen DeGeneres for half the movie kind of feel? So I'm glad that they didn't do that. And then the music, I thought the music was great. I was hyped on the music in terms of, and I know that's like loosely an adaptation, but it does, I'm saying more so like you're reading the book and the ambiance and the feelings of it. I thought they did a good job of using the music to translate how and what we're supposed to feel or where they're guiding us in terms visually. So those were my two additional nominations.
That's a great one. Music is a great one. Wow.
Yes. Anytime My Tears Ricochet shows up in a movie, I will 100% be on board with that.
Oh my gosh. And it showed up at the worst but best time after that just happened. And I was like, and I heard like the, and I was like, oh, forget it. I'm already sobbing. You want me to just cry even more? Oh, it was so good.
We're ruined. I was so with you, Kelly. I was so with you.
I was like so mad at Eric. I was like, do you know what these lyrics are? Like, I need you to read them.
Do you know what she's saying? Do you know?
Read it. Read it. It's going to be so
Pull
much
up
better.
Spotify and read the lyrics as she sings.
That's why it took us so long to finish the movie. I had to make sure I got it the third or fourth time through.
Close read the lyrics.
I was like, but do you know what she meant by that? Because it means more.
Oh my gosh. It was so good. It was so good. Okay, this is convenient because you guys literally hit on all of the ones that I was gonna say. I was literally wrote in my notes, I said, thank God they left out the Ellen journal entries. That is what I said. I said, great adaptation choice. That, I mean, maybe I'm being so rude, which is probable, but like, that was so cringy in the book to me. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it's like reliving in your high school body and you're just like, get me out of here. Like, this was the worst possible time of my life.
Perfect
and I don't want to relive it. So that was great. I agree with Josh. I thought they did like a very nice, very demure adaptation of the Ellen journal entries.
Kind of sprinkled.
So that was exactly. And then also felt very similarly to you guys about the like how they brought the abuse into focus. I thought that it was a really interesting way to sort of mirror what I felt like was Lily's character arc of kind of like you got to experience with her what she was like refusing to see. And then at the end, when it goes through that montage of like, no, this is actually what happened. Like it wasn't an accident, like Kelly said, like it was intentional. It was much more violent than it seemed the first time around. And so I thought that was just a really interesting choice for how they went about doing that. And that actually kind of ties back around to one of my final, I think, reflections on this film. But I thought that they did that really well. And then the flower shop was really cool. I was not sold on the depiction of it in the book. I was like, how are you ever going to make a flower shop not look like a traditional flower shop? Like I have literally never seen anything but a flower shop. And they did such a good job. It felt kind of like spooky and a little bit like, are the flowers sitting in blood? Like, I don't know. And honestly, I'm okay with it if they are. So I
It's
thought
all for
that
the
was
aesthetic.
cool. It's all for the aesthetic. I mean, when your name is Lily Blossom Bloom, you need to find
Gosh.
something to make you a little edgier. Like that
Goodness.
is a necessity. So first she started with Ellen journal entries and she graduated into like bloody flowers. So I think she figured it out.
She grew up.
I'm dead.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
Oh, wait, I have one more hype.
Yes.
Okay, it
Hit
was
us with it, Kelly.
when she was reading the little clip in like the magazine of her or of her flower shop, and then he was sitting there making her read the root one. And again, root bibs. I mean, that was a huge thing that people like were so upset about. And we'll talk about that in a second. Don't want to get off subject, but the anticipation in the book had me so nervous. Like I knew like he knew something. Like you obviously there's a turn where it's like he's reading it and to be like sweet and kind, and then it's like he turns and that villain side comes out of him and you know something is about to happen. But I felt like they did such a good job in that scene, both actors. Like oh my gosh, how she like wasn't making eye contact and it was like coming and building up and she was asking him to stop and he wouldn't like let her stop reading. And you could see that she was scared and it was like this build up. It was just like so perfect that I feel like I was just sweating because Justin's mannerisms and tone was just so haunting and scary that I feel like it was a really good adaptation from what was described in the book. So that part was crazy. I was sweating.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that, Kelly. I thought that was one of the moments that it felt like both in the book and in the movie, honestly, it kind of draws you in. And as an audience member, you feel a little bit. And I think that was kind of, I've read some of the stuff that Colleen Hoover has said about like why she wrote this book and what her intention was behind it. And I think for like, thankfully I exist in a space where I'm like, I've never experienced that in like a real life relationship. But I think being able to have even just like a taste of that like negative anticipation where it's just like, you know, this isn't going to end well. Like you absolutely know what he's doing. You know, he's baiting her. You know, she knows he's baiting her. And it's kind of this moment for her, it feels like in both the book and the movie that she's like, I literally don't know how to make a decision in this moment that will keep me safe, get me out of this situation. So it's just like she's trapped. Like he has trapped her and baited her into this awful, awful moment. And yeah, I was sitting in the theater watching that. I was like, I'm so uncomfortable. Like, I am so uncomfortable. I don't even want to look at him on the screen, like his giant, beautiful face. And I'm like, I like can't, like, it was so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think that was an incredibly well acted scene from both of them.
Real quick reflection on that is it's so, I just watched it last night. So my thoughts were like, this is so bad, but I told Kelly, it's hard. It's really, I typecast actors a lot. And like when I saw her on screen, Blake Lively, my mind went to The Town, where she's like that strung out single mom in Boston with Ben Affleck. And like, it's really hard for me. I don't know why. I have no idea why. Like Christian Bale's always Batman, except for The Big Short. It's the only time Christian Bale broke out of that typecast for me. But she like really thrived in those sort of scenes, which sounds terrible, but I think it was a great job of her. Like we'll get into gripes, we'll get into cast later about age and different parts, but I just think as an actress in that scene, in those tense moments after the staircase incident, when she's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm helping you. He's like gaslighting her. She's thriving in those scenes. Like as bad as that, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. She does a really good job in those tense moments, in those tense scenes, the rooftop scenes, and there's so many parts in the beginning, the first act of the movie, I'm just not buying it. And we'll get into that again, but those scenes just as like a reflection of those intense moments, that anticipation, the gaslighting, they fed off each other really. I told Kelly, I was like, I think she plays to the level of the actors in her scene. Like when she's with Atlas towards the end, again, gosh, I'm just jumping the gun all over the place, but she really elevates her skills as an actress in those moments. And so just reflecting on like those really hard scenes to watch, I think they were hard because they both did such a good job. And the cringy moments, sometimes it's the writing, it's the book, it is what it is. And I don't know if the right person would have overcome that. But in these moments, as you're describing it, it's like absolutely kudos to them for that. So sorry to cross every category in that statement, but we'll move on.
This is what we call glue, Eric. You're just pulling everything together. It's just sticking
just
together.
Too early, though. It's just too early.
It's never too early for glue. Josh, take us into gripes.
All righty, let's do that. Gripes, which I think is going to be one of our favorite sections of the night.
Always.
So think about hypes, but like the exact opposite. You know, this question has to deal with the things that we do not like about the adaptations around anything other than casting, whether it's locations or translations or adaptations of whatever they showed on the screen that we experienced from the book that we thought they didn't do it justice in our minds and our opinions. So why don't we start off? Sarah, why don't you kick us off since you led us the last one?
Oh boy, do I have things to say. I know that's odd, but okay, I'm just going to start with low-hanging fruit here. What are they wearing throughout most of this? Like, I am typically pretty generous in people's, like, you know, like you do you, like you want to wear wild stuff, that's your choice. No one wears what they're wearing in this movie. I don't understand why Blake Lively is dressed like a farmer half of the time in like gigantic Carhartt things that are stuffed into combat boots. Like, I've literally never seen a woman wear anything. I've never seen a man wear that. Like, I don't know what she's doing. And I saw something online where she was like, I'm so excited I got to wear stuff from my own closet. And I was like, girl, I wouldn't tell people that. Like, I would be like, I was forced into this at gunpoint. That is how I wore this in this movie. I was baffled. I was boggled. Like, no one, why would you dress that way? Why would you dress? I feel like Jennifer Lawrence on Hot Ones. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Like, I can't like get out of the verbal pattern of questioning why that was what they wore.
In every scene. Every scene.
There was never a normal, like the onesies were the most normal thing they wore. And that is wild. That is certifiably insane. So, wow, I feel that was cathartic for me. I had to get that out. I was like, I like fashion, but that was crazy. I was like, that's too much for me. No one wears that. And you would not wear that if you were owning a flower shop. Like, I don't understand. So that was my first gripe. My second one, sort of along the same lines, but more of a just like book choice. Like, Colleen, gal, what were you thinking? The names. I like, and I want to be really careful here because I want to be like, you know, name people whatever you want. Like, it's great. But like, the name Ryle is Riley without an E. That is, I don't know. I don't even know. How do you say that word? How do you say it? Ryle? Really? Like, I don't understand.
I'm going to rile them up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what? Like, in a family where the other kids' names were like Emerson and Alyssa, which is like, those are normal. Like, yes. And then Ryle comes in and I'm like, that poor kid was ruined from the beginning. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And also the whole Lily Blossom Bloom thing. I don't know if that was supposed to be funny and a joke, but I was like, that is so weird. So I can't get past it, you guys.
I think that's why Drew isn't on this podcast right now.
Yeah.
Drew was like, I can't read a book where someone's name is Lily Blossom Bloom.
He couldn't.
And I'm like, I get that she kind of tries to play it as a joke in the book and everything, but I'm like, why was that the choice that you made? I don't know. Again, other people do things differently than I do, but that was one that I was like, you could have made any other choice. You could have made any other choice than Ryle, Atlas, and Lily Blossom Bloom. So I'll leave that there for others to comment on, but
those are fair, Sarah. I think one of my notes already was the Lily's outfits, and I literally wrote stylish, sure, but also what are we doing here? Is this Lily or is this Blake? And so it's funny that you're like, I literally read and confirmed this. Kelly,
and confirmed on like E! News. Like, let's be clear, it was was not like fact checking JD Vance. Okay, I was reading E News or something worse, like Tiger Beat. I don't know.
That's so funny. Kelly, what about you? What are some of your couple gripes from you?
Okay, obviously the wardrobe, mainly from Blake. Like I just don't understand. Like there was like media leakage of pictures of what she was like wearing when they were filming, and like everybody was just like, I don't like why? Like I don't understand. And like then the shutdowns happened and like it got pushed back and everyone got to just like roast them. And I feel like they didn't listen to any of that. I'm like, what like when she's on the rooftop scene and she's wearing like a Michael Myers onesie jumpsuit, I'm like, what are you wearing? Why are we wearing this? Who on set was like, "Oh yeah, that looks good. That looks so good." Like, yeah, and pair it with those boots. That looks even better. And let's do your hair. Like, what? Like I'm okay, I'm sorry. I told Eric about this and I was like I get like violent. Even just thinking about it has me a little bit like sweating. When she's at the
Yes.
party and she's wearing like fishnets and a bra and like these like weird boots that are like socks kind of, and she's like, "What are we wearing to bed?" And he like puts a dress shirt on her and she's just like with her crazy hair and fishnets and a bra. It's criminal to go to bed like that. I'm like, nobody does that. Who thought that that was a good idea? Silk and rhinestone fishnets? That's what we decided we were going to be like cutesy and go to bed? No. I told Eric, I was like, I'm so violent. I'm hot. I'm uncomfortable. The sensory issues, I can't handle it. It was
Sleep
awful.
awake.
Yeah, I'm like, well, you're not asleep. It's not sexy. Oh, I don't know. That scene it really messed with my mental health.
Could you just wear his shirt like a baseball tee? Throw on like one of his oversized tees, like the stand. Like, what are we?
The rhinestone fishnets, maybe? I don't know.
This is the best part about the rhinestone fishnets is it's like, okay, there's no way she didn't pee at some point in the night. So she literally made a choice to say, rather than slipping these off of my toes,
I'm gonna pull them back up.
I'm gonna pull them back up and do the whole like Kelly will understand this, the whole like shimmy into tights where you have to like inch them up your legs like a inchworm. She made that choice in the middle of the night. It's like putting on a wet swimsuit. Come on, girl. Just take it off.
Oh my gosh. I cannot handle. I can't. This is so true. So valid. Nobody's sleeping in that. Nobody's sleeping in that. And that's why she's not a girl's girl. Girls, you don't sleep in a bra. You don't do it. There's so many things wrong with her. And I don't know. There's some issues. But I feel like we're being like harsh, but like really, even Eric watching it for the first time, it was distracting in a bad way. Like it was negatively impacting the storyline to where you're like not focusing on what's happening. You're focusing on what she's wearing, which I feel like is the opposite of what should have happened in this movie. Like it shouldn't have been about any of that. It should have been the point at hand and building the relationship so that you can feel what you feel at the end. But I felt like it took you out of it a little bit. And that was just like really annoying. I'm like, of all the things. So yeah, that was a huge one. That was a huge one for me.
To follow up on your note, we were watching it last night and there was a scene where it was like a close up on her, real intense moment, but like she had her lion's mane hair. And like it was I paused it. I was like, is that a normal style? And it literally half the screen, it was her hair like frayed out in a certain way. It was like watching Madagascar. And like I'm just saying, the lion, I don't know his name, but carry on, babe. I'm sorry.
Oh my god. Well, okay, in the book, to be fair, it does like describe her hair as like wild. Like she had her red hair and it was wild. But I just
like wild animal or just wild like she didn't do it. You know what I mean?
Bad. They didn't do it justice. It just made it weird and like anyways, okay. So that was
that is such a good point though, because I think it becomes that moment of it's like, and I think this has been some of the valid criticism of the movie is it's like, was it, and Blake Lively is an incredible, like, she's beautiful. She is obviously at the top of the world from like the fashion standpoint, but it becomes like, who is this movie about? Like, is it about Blake's closet and Blake's hair and Blake's rhinestone fishnets that she's sleeping in? Or is it about this story about a girl named Lily and her experience? And so I think it just felt at times like like you were missing the forest for the trees. Like it was just so difficult to be able to get myself past, like, you could have named that guy like Dave, you know, and I wouldn't have ever thought anything different. And I would have been like, yeah, Dave is a dick. Like he's the worst. Instead, I'm sitting here being like, every time I read the word Ryle, I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know if it's Riley. I've never met anyone named Ryle. I don't know that this is actually like authorized by the government to name your kid this. And I'm like, if it had just been like Dave and Lily, I would have been like, I'm on board. I'm totally absorbed in their story. And instead, I'm like trying to parse through like this strange choice. So I think your point is really good, Kelly, of kind of like, at what point is it like eccentric, and at what point is it eccentric to the point that it takes away from the expressed purpose of the movie or the book?
Exactly. So that one was, yeah, that was very distracting, and unfortunately in a bad way. But another gripe of mine is, okay, I have so many. I'm like, which one do I do? Okay, I'm gonna like stay with the rooftop scene. And there have been, I don't know if this is confirmed. I need a fact checker on this, but I have heard a lot of talk that the rooftop scene was rewritten by Ryan Reynolds. And once that like came in my brain, I was like, oh my gosh, it makes sense, because in the book they had banter, but to me, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I didn't feel like Lily was inherently like a super like comedic funny person. So when she was like, I thought you were like a crypto bro, I was like, what what did you just say?
Is she
like,
Deadpool?
Okay, Deadpool. Yeah, that's literally, I was like, where, okay, Ryan Reynolds, where did that come from? That was like out of left field. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I feel like the humor there was very like Deadpool Ryan Reynolds-y. And it took me out of that scene. But again, the book does have banter, but it was just different than what was portrayed in the movie, I think. And then, okay, did anyone fact check? Because I don't know if that's true.
Apparently on screenrant.com says that Christy Hall made a comment about Blake Lively's comment about Ryan Reynolds writing a key scene in the movie, and that she said she's very proud of her work. And then there were moments where she thought were improvised, and few were little flourished. Sorry, I put quotes because they're quoting her, not because it's like, anyways, I shouldn't have put air quotes. Improvised and a little flourishes, and what now she now realizes may have been written by Ryan Reynolds. So let me see. US Weekly covers it as well. And it sounds like, yeah, she was kind of taken by surprise is what I'm getting, that she didn't know that he rewrote stuff, and the improvisations might have been Ryan Reynolds speaking into the ear of Blake Lively.
Gotcha.
Totally tracks.
Yeah.
So maybe not officially written, but like written. You know what I mean?
Yes. Okay. So that makes sense. So that was unfortunately one of mine. Another one, and this is the one that I struggle with, I think, the most. I don't know. There's a few, but this one, I feel like the depth of Atlas's character was completely taken out. I feel like they didn't, in the movie, they just made it seem like Atlas was this just boy who is struggling with life that she just like kind of fell in love with. But in the book, there was just so much that was left out from his character and his character building. Like when he got sick, I feel like that was a huge turning point in their relationship, and showed how they connected and felt like they were really like understanding each other. And then like when he was like sneaking into her room, and the first time that they like kiss. There's just so much that I feel was removed because they focused more on Ryle and Lily, which I understand because you need to like build that up as well. But that leads me into my next gripe where it's like, I wish they would have almost done a TV show instead because there was so much to these characters that I feel like 2 hours just, it wasn't possible to get across what you needed to get across. So that was super, super hard for me because Atlas just had so much depth and so much more than what was portrayed in the movie.
Hmm.
So that was
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh no, I was
Now
just
look
saying,
at my
yeah,
next
no,
one.
I agree. Sorry. I got excited to agree with that because I think I didn't even think about the idea of turning into like a series or limited series, which would allow space for more character development or more storytelling when it comes to Atlas's depth.
Mhm.
So that's a good point and a bummer that we didn't get that because yeah, it would have been fun to explore that. And also I just wanted to also so Us Weekly just to touch back to which it did say that Christy Hall said that if it was wonderful. I think of the way I framed it earlier might have sounded like Christy Hall was like, I didn't write those and I'm upset. I think she's admitting she didn't write those and maybe he did and that if he did she thinks that's wonderful.
She
But
supports it.
yeah, and Us Weekly said that, but it's not to say the same of everybody because there was a lot of things going on. But to your point though, like that's what happens, I think, when Justin Baldoni is director and producer and bought the rights, and then you have Blake Lively gets brought on, who also gets brought on as a producer. Then all of a sudden, yeah, I think those opportunities for wearing your own clothes or making decisions that maybe take her out, and maybe and maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm being too generous here because maybe it wasn't all like Blake Lively like trying to take over. But I think when you wear multiple hats, things get dropped. And so again, this might be being too generous, but I'm just saying that when you're doing too many things, you're not focusing on the character. And so I think that was a little bit lost.
I think too, we were talking about it, and this is again total assumption, and it's not derogatory at all. The idea of maybe Colleen Hoover getting Blake Lively to be a part of it,
Right.
like she's got major star power,
Right.
right? And so you could be blind to certain things and become a yes man. Like again, it's I'm not trying to be derogatory or put her down or anyone who was involved down, but I can imagine if I had a project that someone I admired or was a really powerful actor, or then decisions kind of maybe fall out of my hands and I don't mind, or I just
Right.
and I lose the vision. And who knows? She was a part of it. That was the other thing too. Is like Colleen Hoover was a part of it. So who knows how much of this was her vision too.
You almost get
But
swept
we were
up
talking about that last night.
in the
Yeah, the swept up in the
excitement.
moment of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you guys see that Colleen Hoover was in it?
What?
What character is she?
It's in the party scene when they're all just like in the party. She's like in the back, like laughing.
Wait, that's an M Night move.
I like
love
paused it and I
cameos.
was like, Eric, that's Colleen
That's such
Hoover.
a Peter Jackson, such a Peter Jackson move. I love
throwing
that.
a spear. Instead of throwing a spear in this one, she's like popping a bottle or something.
That's literally, she's having
Raise the
champagne.
roof.
She's just drinking champagne at the party.
But
Yeah.
it's true
Sarah-
to get swept up by Blake Lively, and I mean, and to think that maybe the reason why you're able to get those sound rights. Yeah, I mean, she had Taylor Swift, right? They're really great friends, if not best friends, or part of that close circle. Now you're getting Taylor Swift songs in your movie, and then you're getting like, which I love. I meant to mention this. They had White Iverson in there. They get some Post Malone, which again, not that song, is his. It is what got him fame, but he's got a lot of other hits now. But you're getting songs by Post Malone, who probably also isn't a very cheap buy, and you're getting all these big names, and you're putting these songs in there, and you're what the possibilities of what you're able to do with your movie. I don't know, getting lost in the excitement of like, oh yeah, my book's going to be made into a major motion picture and Blake Lively's going to help, make it happen. I can see that. But Eric, do you have any thoughts about your gripes?
I have one gripe, but before, Sarah, I have to tell you what happened last night. So we were watching the movie, and I told Kelly during the scene, there was a scene with young Atlas and young Lily, and I was like, God, his fits are atrocious, but I get it because he's homeless. But like the way he was dressed was terrible, and I was like, oh God, that sounded awful. Like I did not mean that disrespectfully. And so she texted Josh right away. Josh, Eric just said his fits are atrocious, but I get it. Josh interpreted that as like Ryle's fits of anger were atrocious, but I get it.
Because all she said was his fits. She didn't say Ryle or Atlas. And also, in my defense, And in Eric's defense too, because I didn't think he was being a terrible human. I thought he was reading the book. So I was like, fits? What fits? Like the fits of anger, but he gets it?
But like,
but
oh
I
yeah,
get
dude,
it.
but I vibe
But
with
get
it. I
Like,
rock with him.
I
Like,
understand why he
what?
pushed her. Like, yeah, I understand. It's
Like,
oh my gosh.
what?
I was so confused because it was like young Atlas next text message, his fits are atrocious. So I was like, she's no way he's talking about Atlas. I was like, Atlas never threw a fit. He never threw a tantrum. I'm so lost and confused. That was why it took him 4 hours, because we had a 30-minute conversation mid-movie, because when it finally clicked, they're like, Josh, I have to call you.
I was like, first of all, it's bad that I made that I made a comment about like a child dealing with homelessness, about him not being dressed appropriately.
And wearing
But then it got escalated to Josh thinking, I was like, yeah, the abuser, like I vibe with it. Like, what the hell? I was like, I need to call him like save
I need to
face
clear my name.
immediately.
To be very clear, Josh.
I was being derogatory about the homeless boy.
Yeah, you can't really. It's like from one out of the frying pan and into the fire.
He took the
Don't
Kelly was
lesser
like-
say that about me,
evils.
Josh. I was being a jerk to the kid who doesn't have parents.
He's wearing Lily's
fits are
dad's clothes. Atrocious.
The fits were
Oh.
brutal.
All of them.
But wait, okay, so my
Oh my
biggest gripe
gosh.
was the length of the movie. I'm like, look, I get it. And I think I told you guys earlier, right? A lot of like book or like page to screen adaptions, aside from outside of Lord of the Rings, I didn't do it in that order. So like this is one of the first experiences in a long time for me. They rushed that third act so much. You have to make choices when you got 2 hours for a movie. And like Kelly was saying, maybe put into a series. But what was pissing me off, like the gender of the baby, them finding out. In the book, I really enjoyed her birthing this girl. And then to me, it felt like having this aha, like, wait, hold on. No, we're not going to do this. She's not going to experience this. She asks him the questions about like, if it was your daughter. To me, that made sense. In the book, it's like, they all know the gender. It's a girl. And there was a really great scene. There was a really great moment with her and her mom in the book, where her mom is like, if Ryle loves you, he wouldn't allow you to take him back. And these really good conversations. And that sticks with her for a few chapters. And again, it was really fresh in my mind. So I just read it and then I watched it. And I'm like, what the hell? The moment she separates from him to her divorcing him, it just happened. And in the book, there's a little bit more of that internal storm that I think people who are in these abusive situations go through. And it was done really well in the book. And on screen, it's like, hey, I'm divorcing you. And she's holding the baby. And I'm like, where was the tug of war in her heart that was laid out in the book? So the choices of what they cut out, I'm like dying here. I'm like, that moment with her mom was special because they built up the abuse her mom went through. And all of a sudden her mom's just like kind of helping her. She's like, what did she say, babe? She said something.
She said, why'd you stay? And she's like, because it was easier to. And then that was the end of
I'm
the
like, what are
scene. We're like, oh.
I'm like, there's some chapters dedicated to this. So again, I know you guys know better than me, especially with the episodes that you guys have done that I've listened to. It's a lot to put into movies. But take a page out of Lord of the Rings and do a director's cut that's 5 hours long, for heaven's sake. Like, not really, but maybe. Like you said, babe, the series or...
Yeah.
I know
Because
it's not
ultimately
realistic.
you're making it for the people who like the biggest audience are the people who read the book. So why not
Right.
just make it into something that's longer? Because like I would watch a 4-hour long movie. I would, if it meant doing the other characters justice, because I feel like and we'll talk about best cast, but like Marshall and Alyssa and young Lily and young Atlas were so amazing and so perfectly casted that I feel like they did not get justice for what they were given in the movie. But that
Young Lily, that was witchcraft. That she
insane. I so agree.
that was crazy. Kelly was like, just wait till you hear her voice. And I heard it. I was like, no, that's like a dub.
When we were in the
It's a
theater,
dub.
seriously, when we were in the theater,
Yeah.
I like heard it and I was like, did they like voice over Blake Lively? I was like, there's no way that is her voice. That is her. It was, and again, fact check. I don't know if this is true, but I heard that Taylor Swift found young Lily and she had never acted in anything before and gave her to Blake Lively. Don't know if that's true, but I heard that too. So Josh, do your little
We like it.
magic
Do your little fact
fingers.
check. Okay, ultimately super crazy also because I don't know about you guys. I don't know, Kelly, did you ever watch Gossip Girl or anything?
Of course.
Okay, yes. Okay, perfect.
I am
good.
cultured.
You were in high school, but like around 2010. Okay,
Yes.
great. So I like that's my first exposure to Blake Lively. Like that was where I watched her, and she was. I mean, I don't think she was exactly a teenager because teenage shows never have actual teenagers in
Right.
them. But like her being a younger person in that, it was crazy to see this girl in this movie because it was just, I was like, wait, did they just like take Serena Vanderwoodson and like put her in? I knew not because her clothes in Gossip Girl are great and there were some iffy choices being made even when Lily was in high school apparently, but it was crazy. I so agree with you guys. At first I kind of did think, I was like, did they just do some like wild AI de-aging or something like that? And then looked her up and I was like, oh, this is an actual girl. Lucky her. Like,
Yes.
wouldn't it be awesome to be like, you look like a young Blake Lively?
Like,
Be like, I'll pay you
exactly
$1
like
million.
her. Right? And Eric was even like, she even has like the little like beauty mark, the little thing. And I was like, and he's like, is that real? I was like, that's real. Like she actually looks
That's crazy.
exactly like her. It was wild.
How did she get found by Taylor Swift?
I don't know,
Taylor
Josh.
Swift like singing at the Eras tour
I
and she was like,
see her.
holy smokes, that's like my friend.
Come up.
The black van just gets her at the end of the, just pulls up to the stadium, just yanks her.
According to the wrap.com, it says that yes, this is her first major role. She did one episode of Evil, don't know that, but it sounds like a TV show. But she comes from the same high school as Jennifer Aniston and Timothy Chalamet and Sarah Michelle Gellar. So it sounds like yes and no, but also yes, because she submitted an open call, and the director said she got an instant approval. But it says, as it turns out, for her last name Ferrer, had another famous guardian angel that also helped her land It Ends With Us, and that was Taylor Swift. She was very helpful of the process edition, which I found out later after I got it, and that rocked my world. So it sounds like Taylor Swift was in the ears of the people or something that swayed
Blake.
Baldoni and the casting directors to play her.
Interesting.
But also, yeah, all those pieces probably help. The fact that she graduated from LaGuardia High School, which is a very like the school with Jennifer Aniston, Timothy Chalamet, and Sarah Michelle Gellar. So I think it was a combination of things. But yeah, that's pretty wild.
Awesome.
It's crazy.
Imagine having Taylor Swift like advocating for you for anything.
Right?
Like I turn my CV or my resume, I apply something, and Taylor Swift just like, yes, hire this guy for what I don't know.
And then you
what
find out
would be
about it
talking
later.
to.
Oh my gosh.
Life complete for real.
Truly.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Any more thoughts before we move on to best cast?
Ooh, I have one more gripe.
Yes.
Okay. It's in the restaurant scene when Atlas finds, like he sees that Lily has the black eye and she goes to the bathroom and he's like, leave him, you need to leave him. And she like walks out. Okay. The moment that you see Ryle there and the way that the camera kind of just like Lily stops and the camera goes on the other side of it just, I felt like the shots and the camera was so amazing in that point. That was amazing. But okay, this is gonna get a little PG-13, but in the book, Ryle says something to Atlas that is, I feel in the movie he says, this is the guy that you wasted your virginity on, or something like that. And in the book, he says, this is the guy that you pity effed. And I feel like in that moment, I wish they would have left it, even though what rated is it? Is it PG-13?
You can say the F word once in a PG-13.
Okay, so there we go. You could have left it because I feel like it had so much more of like venom in it that made it, because it made it very clear that Ryle in the book, that Ryle wanted to make sure that he hurt Atlas. Because even Eric was like, what is he, after that scene, Eric was like, what does he mean? Like anyone but him, Lily. He kept on repeating that. Anyone but him, Lily. Anyone but him. He has like insecurity towards Atlas because of what Lily has explained to him. Like he was jealous of him in like the first scene when she was explaining it. So he's had this like built up of emotions of resentment towards Atlas. And I feel like in that moment, like pity effed is crazy. And I feel like it was so much more hurtful and so much more powerful in the book than it was like, oh, this is the guy you wasted your virginity on. Like, I don't know. I just felt like
Right.
that was, go ahead, baby.
That reminds me, towards the end, and again, this is just nitpicky because I just read it. During the last moments of her pregnancy, Ryle's like over and they're like kind of okay, but she hasn't forgiven him. And she looks at him and she says, I wish with everything in me that this was not yours, that this was not part of you. That's what I mean. Like that was left out. So you don't get that internal battle. There's lines, and again, you can't put everything in. I'm just being a dick. But like truly. But there are certain things that I think matter because that line
Right.
was like, oh my God, she actually might leave him. She actually feels resentment towards him, like rightfully so. But you don't get that display on screen. It's like she has this
Right.
aha moment and then they're divorcing after her and her mom are hanging out. Like there's certain lines like you said there. Again, I'm not trying to belittle it. I'm just saying like these moments in the book that for me did it, that got me emotionally invested, like that line got me in. I was like,
Right.
hell yeah, Lily. Like this guy sucks. I was in it. And in the movie, it's just like, anyways.
Right. Yeah. To remove the venom from some of the dialogue, I think adds so much to the character. It's so much showing of the character without telling us the character. And I think by changing the language, not just like in that scene, because I agree with you in the restaurant, also at the very beginning on the rooftop, like it was in a less fighty way, but the way he was coming onto her in the book used stronger language, more F words, more like aggressive, intense language that I think showed you his character. Like just like him beating the shit out of that chair the on the rooftop, right? That language shows you like, oh, this is the guy that's like, I need to do this act. I need to have sex with this woman, and his drive on that, I think, showed you a lot of his character. By changing the language and removing some of the dialogue that held so much toxic or too much venom, was a disservice, I think, too.
Yes, that's so good. That's exactly what I meant. It is really good.
Yeah, he was just like a playboy who was like, hitting on her, and the way he kicked the chair was like any sports fan after their team loses. Like, and not downplaying it, but yeah, the book was much more descriptive, and so. And anyways,
no, those are great. Okay, so Sarah, why don't you take us into best cast?
Perfect. So we'll just toss out kind of our nominations we would make for who the best cast from these movies are. If you have a couple, do that. Or if you're like, no, this is the one I could think of, which is rude of me to say, but mine were like a little slim, on this. But Josh, do you want to start with your best cast nominations for It Ends With Us?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be unanimous. But I don't know. But that's my thought here. But young Lily, I think, is my top. I know we had mentioned it, but young Lily, Isabella Ferrer, incredible. Young Atlas, which he reminded me so much of. And I apologize again. I'm really bad with names. Anton Yelchin. He passed away, unfortunately, in a tragic accident. But he was in The Green Room. Me and Eric watched that for another episode. Shameless plug. Green Room, early episode of Sweet and Condensed, formerly known as Living a Stream. But he was also in Star Trek. I almost literally turned my monitor, which I should have just turned it on my phone. But Anton Yelchin. So, anyways, that was like, again, pulling at my own personal heartstring, just because I'm like, you kind of look like this guy. And so that was, but outside of that too, I think you did a good job.
Also, I love that you're referring, every time you've said Young Lily, it kind of makes me think she's like a rapper, like Young Jeezy or something like
Lily.
that. Young Lily.
Remember when Taylor Swift was a rapper, a young rapper?
Oh
Just
my
kidding.
God.
Wait, I do remember that. Great
Best
throwback.
rap ever.
Deep cut. Deep cut. No, those are great start off for us, Josh. I'm going to go in my reverse order on my screen. So, Eric, who are your nominations for best cast?
For me, it was older Atlas, and he didn't have a whole lot of screen time, but he really captured me in his scene. And again, it didn't follow directly with the book, but when she shows up at the restaurant and he has that moment where he gives her this look like, oh shit, I knew it. That for me was like that did it that was when I got emotional in the movie. Because again, everybody has their different parts, but for me, that was the bummer because he like knew it and he anticipated it and he tried to protect her from it in whatever ways. But I love the way he displayed that. It was just subtle. He didn't have a whole lot of time to on screen to give us much. He came to the flower shop and there was a few moments, but I think in the short amount of time he was on screen for the adult cast, which was pretty rough aside from, we everybody's talked about it. I think he did a great job. So I liked his cast choice also because it's sort of what I pictured in my head. You create this world, which was just super fun. And Kelly and I talked about it. She always made fun of me because I like to read like self-help books. This was fun because I know why you guys like this now. I'm just you create it in your brain and seeing it on screen either sucks, you love it, but it's really fun what you put together in your mind. And so anyways, for him, as soon as he came on screen, I was like, yes, this is the guy. And I did not feel that with many others. So
I love that. Welcome, Eric. It is never too late to join the world of reading books and then watching their adaptations.
My brain is growing.
And just hate on the ad. Yeah, just hate on it. Hate on the movies. That's
I love it.
Did you say, babe, something last night that you were like, I was like, yeah, the book is always better than the movie. And you were like, you didn't expect that. You expected to like the movie and feel more in the movie, but you were shocked that you felt more in the book.
Yeah, because because I love movies so much. And again, most of the time I watched the movie before I read the book. And what I told her was unfair is the Lord of the Rings trilogy is historic cinema. So it's nothing. And for me, that's my only experience. So it's the movie was fantastic. The books are great and super fun. But I heard everybody say, oh, the book's always better. And now I get why. It's man, this is not what my mind created. And my mind is much more important than this movie. What was in here is much more important. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. Kelly, what are your best casts?
Okay,
or who? Sorry, what? What?
What?
She is the best.
Depersonalizing.
Okay. I believe that the best cast should 100% easily go to Alyssa. She felt like such a constant throughout the whole movie. She was consistently funny. She was consistently emotional. She was consistently loving. She was just so consistent. And throughout the whole movie, she was just a pillar of support for Lily since the very, very, very beginning in the book and in the movie, and continued to be that support all the way through the end. Because to me, I feel because of her relationship with Ryle, her words and her actions almost held more weight than someone who was just a friend of Lily, because she loved Ryle, and not in the same way that Lily loved Ryle, but she Lily understood that she also loved Ryle as a separate human than just being Lily's boyfriend or husband. He was also a brother, and she had that perspective of him. So when it's just not another person who could very easily be any friend of Lily's that's just oh, just leave. Just leave. It's easy. He's not treating you well. He's hitting, just leave. But it was she understood the depth of the situation and how it complicates emotions when it's not very black and white. And she still consistently led her out of the toxic relationship without ever making her feel like she was making a stupid decision or that she wasn't supported. And she made me laugh out loud more than anybody else. So I just felt her comedic relief, her support for Lily, everything was just she was just chef's kiss. She was the best one out of all of them. And I also I really feel Marshall had so much potential to be way better than what he was, but he just wasn't given any screen time. Eric got so excited when he saw Marshall on screen, and he's like, is this that comedian guy? I'm so excited. And I was like, yeah, say hello and goodbye, because his first scene is his only scene. He has 4 seconds in the rest of the movie. I feel he had Alyssa and Marshall had so much more potential, just how I had said about young Lily and young Atlas. I just feel they just needed more time. So yeah, Alyssa.
I feel with Alyssa, that reminded me of another thing. It's more gripe than cast, but the way that at the end, right before she told Lily to leave him, she was talking about the trauma her brother experienced. And in the book, Ryle does that. Ryle's oh, because I shot my brother, I act like this. I was not a super fan of that because in the book that pissed me off so much to like use the excuse of trauma to hurt somebody else. So I wasn't a fan of that. But then she closed it out with like, if you don't leave him, I'll never talk to you again. So I was like, all right, that's fair. But that made me angry that they switched it because in the book it pissed me off. Anyways, sorry, just my thoughts, just things that made me angry. Go ahead, Josh. Talk to us about cast.
I love that. I think that's such a good point, Eric. I'm going to kind of jump on that because that gets at some of the other things that I was thinking about in this of like, I really struggled with Ryle's character of kind of like, was he too sympathetic? Like with the whole like backstory of like why he is this way. Like obviously it's so traumatic, right? Like no one should ever have to live through that. But also, and this goes back to kind of what you were saying of like in his more like on the rooftop scene when he's like beating the chair. He doesn't just kick the chair, he like beats it into a pulp. Or like his Kelly, to your point, when they're like in the restaurant and his like, I agree with you, his language he uses in the book, it's so much more violent. Like it's just violent. And there was a part of me as I read the book that I was like, something is not tracking with this for me of why he is like, why no one has concerns about him being with this child once she's born. Like there was an element of it, and maybe that's me being like way too crazy, but I was like, he's not in control. And I don't want to blame him for that because he's obviously had a lot of trauma, but I was like, he's not in control and everyone's fine with him being around his daughter, like with a child, but he apparently like blackout abuses his wife. Like I'm uncertain as to why we're making this decision for this small baby. And I don't know. I like had some issues with that throughout the whole book. And I also wondered, and again, this is an author's choice. She had to make a choice. She wrote in the direction she did. But I also thought, to me, I actually was sort of furious at this, like, oh, he has a traumatic background. And I'm like, many people abuse other people without having murdered their brother as a child. Like, there doesn't have to be this wild, like, make this super dramatic because it's going to be a book that millions of people are going to buy and read. It felt that to me, I got kind of upset at that part because I was like, what about every other story where there's not something that dramatic and everyone has their own trauma they deal with, but like we are responsible for dealing with that in a healthy way. Like I don't know, that to me got like, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but that like really bugged me. I don't know how to process through it yet of like, what am I mad about? Like, what am I really mad about? And do I have the right to be mad about it? Or like, it's just a choice. It's just a choice that the author made. Or
no, you have a right to be mad about it. I got mad in the book and I got mad in the movie that both times it felt like, let's give the readers or the viewers this excuse. And maybe that's not her intent, but that's how it felt both times. And it got me so mad because they're like, on the opposite side of your point, there are plenty of people who go through traumatic shit that don't
right
do what he does. And like maybe they deal with it or combat their anger or combat their issues. They do because it's real, but not in a way that they're not combating their issues by combating their wife. Like like that made in both areas. I think I called you when I was reading a babe at work. And then during the movie, I paused it. I'm like, this is ridiculous because it does that. Even if it's not intentional from the author, it plants that seed of like, well, look, like, let's cut him some slack. And as her husband, she might think that. But there's not a single other person in the world who, like, maybe we're wrong in this, but I was losing it. Like both times. I'm like, first of all, his sister is doing this. And again, I know she closed out with like, you got to leave him or I won't talk to you. So I love that. But until those words came out of her mouth, I was like, nah, no way we're doing this. We're like, she's trying to defend him. It felt that way.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm sweaty.
Okay, wait, pause. Did you guys know that this was written about Colleen Hoover's like mom? It's based about her mom. That is crazy. Like when I read this whole book and I didn't find that out until like a year after I read it, and I was like, wait, this is based like loosely. Obviously, I don't think the part about. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how much is true and how much is not true, but that is like her mom's story. So her mom was portrayed as like Lily. I thought that was insane. Yeah, I thought that was crazy.
And that she kind of wrote it in a way, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but what I read was kind of like Colleen Hoover wrote it in a way to try and explore some of her mom's, like why her mom made the decisions or didn't make the decisions that Colleen Hoover herself might have thought she should have made. And so that's where I think one of the things that I like in this movie, and I think in this movie and in this book that has been helpful to me is kind of these moments of it's like even just that conversation we just had of it's like, do I even have the right to think this or to have this reaction to this? And I think one of the things I've come back to as I've kind of tried to parse through I had intense feelings about this book. Like I could go back and read the text messages I was sending to Josh and Brenna. I was like all caps constantly. But it's also like, was I the person this book was written for? And the answer could be no. Like it could be that I get to have my feelings and my reactions to this book, to this movie, but it also could be that like my feelings about this are kind of out in left field for what the intent was of kind of this like, hey, if you've ever found yourself in this situation, if you've ever found yourself sitting on the counter being forced to read something or forced into an interaction that you did not agree to, like you're seen. Like here's a movie for you. And so I've had a hard time kind of going around of like being like my feelings are valid, but also do I get to critique this because of my feelings, or do I just say maybe this starts a whole conversation? And so I don't know. I think it is I've really gone back and forth, and even just like in thinking about doing this episode, I think I was like, man, how much do I like get to say about this? And then I think the cool thing about like any film, any book is that like everyone gets to have an opinion about it. And I think that that's then where for people who make movies or people who write books, it's kind of this like, maybe that's how some of the water like runs over their shoulder of criticism is it's like, hey, cool. Like you can think weird things about the costumes, but like ultimately you weren't the person I was making this movie for. So like, great. And I don't know. But I think that is an interesting, it is helpful to me to know though, too, that I was like, why am I having such strong feelings? And then I'm like, oh, you guys all had strong feelings too. Good. I'm not I'm not like wild here.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like the book allows for a little bit more exploration of her feelings, or yeah, you're right about her mom, because I remember her saying after the first or second incident and abuse, she says, oh, my dad did never have a reason. Ryla at least has it, like something along those lines, and I'm butchering it. That made me so angry. She's like, oh my gosh, but my dad actually never loved us, never had a reason to be angry. Ryle has these reasons, but he really loved, and I was losing it. But then I'm like, to your point, people who've experienced this, that's a real feeling that they have. Yeah. Those are real excuses that they make, or like they gaslight themselves, or they're gaslit into these. I love to use that word because I gaslight people all the time, according to Josh. But like,
excuse me.
So I get it. So it was making me so angry. But then, I had that same feeling of like, that's fair. That was their reality of like, that's what someone who started a relationship off as loving would do. You would think, oh gosh, no, like it's not as bad as XYZ or as this situation or as that couple. It could never be that. So like, I get that. It made me so angry too, but that's what the book provides, more that nuance though that you don't get in the movie. I don't know how many times I've said that on this episode, but yeah, it just, you get these strong feelings, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. From her shoes, Colleen Hoover's, and then from her shoes, trying to be in her mom's shoes, there's layers to it that don't come across well, but they still invoke emotion. Like you're gonna, regardless.
Totally.
So, okay. All righty. Let's go ahead and let's jump to worst cast, our final question of the night. And so for this one, what do you guys think about who was the worst cast when it comes to reading the book, who you had in your mind, who you were picturing, and how they casted that person onto the big screen? And we can go ahead and kick it off. Let's see. Eric, we'll also go in reverse order. Eric, what do you think?
Lily.
No notes.
No notes. Just kidding. It's Lily. Sorry. She's great. Blake Lively's great. Love me some Gossip Girl, The Town. What was the Favor movie with her and
Simple Favor.
Simple Favor. She rocks.
Crushed.
She has some great scenes. I just feel like didn't work for me. So there were a few notes actually.
I agree.
Absolutely.
That was who mine was too, Eric. I just like couldn't get on board. I I couldn't believe her. And also, I think this gets at, I had a real issue with the age of the characters, the whole just like randomly aging them up, but changing nothing else about the story. I was like, that's not how age works. But yeah, I just like didn't, I think they were great scenes. I think you're exactly right. Like some of the more intense scenes, she totally carries like a lot of that intensity and adds to it. I just didn't, I just didn't believe her. And I don't know if that's because I didn't actually really believe Lily in the book. Like I like couldn't get on board with her in the book either. I was like, and not because it was like, why are you staying with him? I was just like, well, who are you? Like, who? I don't really know you, and I don't really know how to know you in this book. And that was how I felt in the movie too. Is I was like, I want to be your fan, Lily, but like, I can't. I just don't. I don't know you. I don't know how to know you, and that was
The opening
troublesome to
scene
me.
of her showing up to her mom's and then the funeral, I'm like, I'm sorry, this is not a college age
This is not it.
person.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric.
And is any more, Sarah? Is that that
No.
was your
It was her.
thoughts?
The only other thing I said in my worst cast was, how dare they besmirch the name of Kevin McKidd by making him her terrible dad. And I was like, listen, Kevin McKidd already got a rough go in Grey's Anatomy and like had bad storylines. Like, let's just give this man his flowers. Like, let's let him be happy for once. So that was my other one.
Let him be happy. Let him be liked for once.
He was a very not likable character in the book, and so
Oh yeah,
that
he's
is
trash.
that is unfortunate. Yes, and again, I have a gripe about that, but it's more of a book thing about how she was like, "Hey, by the way, I think he's the mayor." Like halfway through, or she was like, "Just like why did you say that at the beginning?"
That sent me. I was like, what the hell? Of Boston? Or I don't know. No, it was a Boston. But I'm sorry, but
Plethora, Maine. No, it was Plethora, Maine.
that's right.
Again with the names.
It was a trip. Kelly, what are you thinking about worst cast?
I mean, it definitely is Lily. There was just some of the time. Okay, like I'm half and half on these scenes because there were some scenes where she's like smiling and laughing where I like understand it to a point. Like there was like before he bit her and he's like telling her like, okay. And she's like, okay. And she's like smiling and laughing because I feel like that's almost like a defense mechanism.
Mhm.
And like I don't know how to like, she's almost trying to gain control of the situation when there's so much chaos and she's hiding her own vulnerability by like just laughing it off and pretending like everything's fine. And maybe she's just trying to diffuse the situation and tell herself that everything is fine. But I feel like in those moments, and the other one was when he found her Atlas's number in her phone case, and she's like telling him it's nothing. Like I was so frustrated with her in that moment because I'm like, explain like what happened. Like he put it there. You didn't go searching for. You're not hiding it from him. It's like explain. But she was just like, it's nothing. Okay, it's nothing. And then she's like laughing, and it's like it's almost like she's trying to process like what's about to happen and trying to like disassociate and be like, oh, this is not about to happen. Like everything's fine. She's almost like she's kind of like soothing herself. And I get that. I get that part. But there's this one part and I can't stand it. It makes me so mad. It's at the very, very end of the movie. And it's when he's holding the baby and she looks at him and she's like, I want a divorce. And he starts to like get upset and start crying. And she like taps his face like no, we need a divorce. Like we do. Like it was almost like so condescending that I'm like, that's not Lily. And that's not how those conversations are gonna go. If you're talking to your like abuser, someone who has actually hurt you and actually destroyed your family and your life, you're not gonna be like, smack. Like that's not how that conversation is going to go. And it really just took me out of it and gave me like an unserious feeling. Like even the people in the theater, when I was watched it for the first time, they would like, people laughed. And I'm like, this isn't the tone. This isn't the tone that was in the book. This isn't the tone that we're trying to portray. And I feel like that was in the book, it was like heart wrenching. And in the movie, it was just like, you're okay. Like, shh, you're okay. Like, I was like, ugh. So I just feel like in those parts, she just took me out of it. And it just was hard to get back into it after that. I was like, she's not understanding the tone. She needs to have the tone. And that was really rough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was mine. That's the only one I wrote as well, which is, I was hearing the age up. I was like, oh, that's actually, I think, a smart move in the terms of like the neurosurgeon context and the book and what's going on. I was like, oh, okay, cool. They're going to adapt this and make it, you know, in this way. And I thought, and Blake Lively, again, like how Eric had mentioned, seen her in previous things. Yeah, that was a bummer for me. That was a big miss, I think, because I initially was excited and then it was a big letdown for all the things that were noted here. So we don't need to, you know, beat that horse. Is that still, I shouldn't say those things, I don't think, anymore.
Beating a dead horse? Is
there
that
we
what
go.
you're
Beating
trying to
dead
say?
horses. Yeah. My brain is having
It's
some
okay,
misfires.
Josh. You've also you bear with me when I mess up weird sayings. So it's okay.
Best bang for your bucks. Okay. Alrighty. On that note, okay. The last and final thing, real quick: page or picture? Which one, the book or the movie, for y'all? Which one was better in for your experience?
The book.
Book for Kelly. Eric.
The same here.
Oh, okay. Book. Sarah.
I'm going to absolutely ruin Josh's mind right now. I'm choosing the movie right now. I honestly, I like that, and it felt crazy. It felt crazy for me to say that. And I will say at the end of this conversation, I feel like you guys have like swayed me a little bit back towards the book. I did not like the book. I didn't like it. And yet I read it in like 6 hours. Like I read it so fast. So like that makes no sense to me to be like, why did you do that if you didn't like it? Like there's an element of it that I clearly enjoyed. Or I don't even know if enjoyed is the right word. It was like I had to get to the end.
You had
because
to
I was
find out what
furious.
happened.
I was like fury reading. Maybe that is like, rather than Fury Road, I'm like fury reading. That is what my life memoir is going to be about. But I don't know. I think I felt like the movie, as much as I felt like, Kelly, your comment about the unserious tone that I felt like Blake Lively contributed to certain scenes, that is exactly spot on. Like you described exactly how I felt about Blake Lively in so much of this. But I did feel like the way that they portrayed the abuse in the movie was, to me, the most important point. It was kind of this like, let this come into focus. And I didn't get that in the book. And part of that is because there was more space to explain it in the book. But I felt like the movie almost became more of Lily's story rather than Lily and Ryle and Atlas. And that was kind of, for me, resolved some of my internal conflict from the book of kind of feeling like, why is Ryle getting so much space here? Why do we like here's Atlas now kind of coming in and rescuing her? And I did feel like, as much as those decisions felt super rushed, I think that was a super great criticism, Eric, of like, it just, the third act is like poof, gone. And I'm like, okay, like here we are, I guess. But I did feel like there was an element of it that the movie was totally Lily's story. And that I liked. And I think it helped resolve some of my furious reading from when I read the book in a weekend. So anyway, there's my crazy take.
Sarah, you might also find this mind-blowing. Not that I
Are you
am
gonna
going to
choose
say
the
the
movie
movie,
too?
but that we're agreeing, because I like the movie more. And as much as I had all these gripes to talk about, I think overall the experience in terms of the things that they did adapt, like the Ellen DeGeneres and removing those things, and then the music and just the way that they did bring things to life, I did enjoy that. And pretty similar to Sarah, like it wasn't my favorite read. I didn't enjoy it that much. So I think being able to, the work that was done both by the people who made the movie and also me, the work that I did to engage and transform what I was thinking onto the screen, just made it, I think, a fun experience. So so that, I guess, give credit to the book too, in that sense, that it played a huge role in that process. And so, but the movie, the picture is gonna win it for me. So
wow, this is shocking.
Wild.
Half and half.
Good for us.
Look at us.
Half and half. Yes.
That's growth on all our parts.
Growth.
I know.
Look at us being healthy adults.
Look at this. Look at us disagree and still be friends. Wow.
And maybe it's just that it's 11 p.m. and we're fighting is just not worth it right now. So no.
We're all, yeah,
We're
you're
like,
right.
your opinion is super valid. Can I go to bed yet?
You're like, that's so great.
On that note, thank you all for listening. We hope you enjoyed this Medium project format. And if you did like it, why don't you share with a friend? And hopefully we'll keep doing some of these. Best way to support this podcast is to follow us on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribing is very helpful. Also, we have a YouTube. You can subscribe there. Follow us on social media. Give us dollars on Patreon.
If you made it this far in the episode, we will give you dollars.
That's... We'll see if you get the director's cut or like the movie studio hour 20 cut or the 2-hour director's cut. Subscribe to sweetandcondensed.com. We have a weekly newsletter that lets you know that the newest and latest theater releases, are they worth the price of admission, or if you should wait till they're streaming. There's also some fun takes on all things movies, and also future movie releases that we think we should put on your watch list. So that's a fun thing. sweetandcondensed.com. Also, everything I just said, all those links, they're in the show notes, so you can go ahead and click down there, visit those things. And yeah, till next time, have a good day, evening, or whatever time of day you're listening to this.
Thanks for coming on this journey with me, guys. That was super fun.
Great idea, Kelly.